Hey everyone, in each of these next sets of videos, we're going to be talking about an individual passage from the mock SOL and going over all of the questions. So for our first one, we have cleaning tables. Now with cleaning tables, it asks us to look back at paragraph 2 and read this statement. And so Julie relaxed, thinking Mr. Malone would let another tardy slide by. What does this sentence suggest? But we want to look at it in the context of the paragraph. So Mr. Malone turned down from the piano and said, "Julia, I'm happy you could join us." He continued teaching, explaining the new music they were preparing to learn. Julia relaxed, thinking Mr. Malone would let another tardy slide by. Unfortunately, she realized at the end of class that she was incorrect. Now, there's a couple of things that you can glean or learn from this paragraph. First and foremost, Mr. Malone is turning from a piano, so he's obviously a music teacher. Secondly, he looks at her, and then he continues teaching, and Julia relaxes because of this. So it's almost like the last time she was tardy, Julia did this before. Okay, so we would probably pick Julia. Mr. Malone sometimes forgives Julia's delays because he's most likely done it in the past if she's relaxed from this. Okay, it's not about understanding her actions. There's nothing really showing that he understands her. They don't know what to expect from each other, and Mr. Malone get along well with each other. There's nothing, I think they probably do, but there's nothing to really glean from this paragraph to that. But we wanted to make sure that we understand, hey, number one, Mr. Malone is an English teacher, and number two, he usually forgives her for being late. So question 2 in paragraph 6, this was arguably, this and maybe question 12, the two most questions on the test. So Mr. Malone replied, "I've talked to you about your tardiness and you're aware of the rules for being tardy so many times. I'm afraid you won't be able to attend your upcoming field trip." That's the context that you need. You need this context before you go into the next paragraph. It's to hear the city orchestra, Julia protested. "We're going behind the scenes at the concert hall and learning." And then just for more context, Mr. Malone interrupted gently, "I don't want you to have to stay here, but I don't have a choice. Unless your parent or guardian comes in to discuss this with the principal and me, you won't be attending." Julia turned to gather up her things from her desk and left, walking slowly home. Nowhere in here does it show she's angry. She's not yelling. She's not screaming. She's not even deep in her thoughts, because with herself, you would see her in her thoughts, thinking about all the things she did wrong. Also, nowhere in here do you see her disagreeing. She's not yelling at him. She's not disagreeing with him. He's even speaking gently to her on the next paragraph. So a lot of people I've saw pick C, but the best answer here is D, because she really wants to go. "It's to hear the city orchestra," Julia protested. "We're going behind the scenes at the concert hall and learning." She really wants to do those things. That's how you know it's D. Okay? But it helps to look at the paragraph before. It helps to look at the paragraph after. Question 3, paragraph 12. Most people did not miss this one, but I still want to talk about it. So the next day after school, Julia walked to the principal's office. Her father and Mr. Malone were already there talking with Mrs. Thompson, the principal. When everyone was seated, Mrs. Thompson spoke. "Julia, I have a question for you. Why are you cleaning the science tables?" I think this part alone, the "why are you cleaning the science tables" part, is enough to figure out what topic do the adults most likely discuss before Julia arrives. And of course, it's Julia's reasons for arriving late. They were obviously in there, because if you look at the paragraphs before, she explains to her dad that she had gotten in trouble, and he says that he's going to come to school to have a conversation with the principal and with Mr. Malone. And so here, it's not about her grade in science class. Mr. Malone has nothing to do with science class. Reluctance to share her feelings. Why would that would be a counselor conversation or somebody else conversation? And then why does her ability to make friends mean anything? I mean, you could do process of elimination as well, but you also look here. Why are you cleaning the science tables? That's really the only option. Okay. Paragraph 14, you want to go to paragraph 14, you want to read paragraph 14. You don't just want to say, "Oh, acknowledgement, I know what that word means," but we want to see how it's used in context. So here it is being used. So, "By helping your friends so they wouldn't get in trouble, you get yourself in trouble," Mrs. Thompson said. Julia nodded in acknowledgement. "Your science teacher and I will be clearing that issue up, dealing with that issue soon. However, you were still tardy 3 times in one grading period, Julia." So she's nodding to the comment, right? She's nodding to the comment. "By helping your friends so they wouldn't get in trouble, you got yourself in trouble." I can't be anything else besides admitting something is true. She's not appreciative of what Mrs. Mrs. Thompson is saying. She's not expressing strong feelings. She's not yelling at her or disagreeing or screaming or whatever. She's not acting out of concern, but she is nodding in agreement, right? She's like, oh yeah, I did that. I did that. Yeah. This was a tough one, not because anyone doesn't understand. It's just the word is normally, you want to break down the word general, okay? General and normal is how you would have to look at something like this if you don't know what the word generalization means. This overall was a really tough one. I have some good news for you, Julie. Mrs. Thompson said as she walked back to the room, Mr. Malone has explained to me how excited you are about the orchestra field trip. Normally, many tardies would exclude you from participating. So instead of saying normally, you would say generally, this many tardies would exclude you from participating. She paused. She generally and stared at Julia. Generally, I have considered the motives. And what was the last one? I considered wouldn't even work because it's a verb. So you would need to plug the word in if you're really struggling to understand. Look at the root of the word. Look at the word, like the main part of the word, which is general, and see which one of those would fit in this. That's how you would have to do it if you don't know the meaning of the word. If you knew the meaning of the word, generalization, then you got this one without any hesitation. This one I thought was pretty self-explanatory. She was tardy 3 times. So because she was tardy 3 times, she now has several days of detention. Of course, I'm not going to know how to do this the right way. Come on, just drag over for me. All right, and it says down here at the bottom, you'll have 1 day of detention for each tardy. She was tardy 3 times, 1 day of detention for each time she was tardy. I thought that one was a pretty easy one. You just had to read the entire passage again if needed to find that example. But with summaries, we should hopefully have just written this out here. She's going to get 3 tardies. That should have been your summary for paragraph 19, and then you would have gotten this one correct. Number 7, which statement is most likely true about Julia's dad? Now, this is an entire passage question. So you need to go back into all of your summaries, go back into all of the passage. And I mean, really though, it's just the sections here where it goes from paragraph 8 to paragraph, I want to say 12, roughly. Yeah. So, well, I mean, I guess to paragraph 15, because it does kind of mention Julia's dad down here at paragraph 15 as well. Julia's dad continued, you're still responsible for breaking the rules, even if it was for a good reason. Do you have any ideas for punishment? And that's probably the most important statement, is this part right here. So I guess paragraph 8 through paragraph 15 is really what you want to focus on. And he wants her to learn from her mistakes. Like, you're still responsible for what you did, right? And it's a hard thing for some kids to learn that they're responsible. He's not closely observing her. He's not eager to defend her. Nowhere in this does he like scream for his daughter or like blindly argue with the teacher or the principal. He feels Julie has the ability to do well in school. That is true, but that's not necessarily what like most likely true, right? It's that he wants her to learn from what she did wrong. Which sentence states the most likely reason Julie is allowed to go on the field trip? This one in question too, right? Probably the 2 most missed ones. And this one you definitely have to go back in through paragraphs 8 all the way through paragraph 17. Okay, and it's just being difficult trying to highlight and reread everything. But you also want to ask yourself, like, who is the person that is responsible for whether or not she gets to go on this field trip? It's Mrs. Thompson. So when does Mrs. Thompson finally say, oh, it's okay, you can go? Right here, when Mr. Malone, where did they go together? It's like, right. Julie's dad, you're not so responsible for breaking the rules. Julie shook her head. Mr. Malone quietly motioned to Mrs. Thompson, and they both stepped out. Please highlight this time. Nope, doesn't want to highlight for me. They both stepped out of the room, and then up until this point, Mrs. Thompson does not agree with her going. She's like, this girl's not going. She's broken the rules. I'm not going to let her go. And then Mr. Thompson takes her out and probably says something along the lines of, but Julia loves music so much. She's so excited, blah, 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 blah. And so she changes her mind. Thank you, Mr. Malone, for changing her mind. But you needed kind of the whole context. So when you see a question like this, it's important to look back at your summaries for this whole section. If your summaries are not the best, which sometimes unfortunately is the case, then you need to go back and just reread these paragraphs, because it's not just going to come to you, right? We're not just going to guess. Like, and why would this? I saw a lot of people choose this question. This one, Mrs. Thompson thinks Julia made a mistake. Think about that. Like, why? Why would you ever pick this answer? States the most likely reason Julia is allowed to go on the field trip. Name me a time that you've made a mistake and the adult has said, oh, okay, well, thank you for making this mistake. Now you get a milkshake. Now you get to go to Busch Gardens. Now you get to go to a movie. Now you get to spend the night with your friends. Now you get $20. When has that ever happened? It's never the case. So why are we picking this one? If you go back and look at the passages, there's no way you would have picked this one. But also just like logically, I don't understand why we're picking this one. She doesn't conduct herself respectfully during the meeting. You would need to look back through that. She's not disrespectful, but she's not like overly respectful. And they're like all of a sudden, well, because of your actions in the meeting today, Julia, you're going to get to go. And then this was a throwaway one because her father was with her, so there's nothing to do with that. So you really need to go back on questions like this. If it's not a specific paragraph question, you need to find where in the passage it looks, which brings us to our next question too, question number 9. Now with question number 9, at the end of the story, the reader may conclude that the biggest reward for Julia is what? So what is she learning by the end, right? What is she learning by the end right here? I hope your friends won't take advantage of you like this again. But before that, what does she learn? She learns that she's so excited that she's having her true character understood, right? Because that is what got her out of trouble in the sense of I still get to go on the field trip. She's still not out of trouble in the sense that she's going to get her tardies. She still has consequences for her actions, but she's at least out of trouble with the sense that she now gets to go on the field trip that she wants to go on. So that's passage 1. I know I'm going through them quickly, but hopefully this helps clarify anything that you may have struggled with in passage 1. Notice that everything is in the passage. You just got to break it down and go back and look over everything.